Cornelius Smith. In addition to testifying about the agreement that he and the defendant entered into, he also testified about the killing. He said that on the day of the murder, the defendant picked him up from his father's house. They both knew.
How you going to drill with a stranger, man? Yo, niggas is crazy, man. How you going to drill with a stranger and think he ain't finna tell on you?
That the victim was doing a turkey drive with several of his PRE artists. They also knew that Big Jook had a hit out on all of the PRE artists. So it was their job that week to find them. And on November 17th, 2021, Cornelius Smith and Justin Johnson were on their way to a turkey drive in Westwood. As they were about to turn the corner, they saw a familiar car cross the intersection, which happened to be Dolph's car. Cornelius tells us that they followed the car, made a loop onto a back street, and then entered the Makita's parking lot. And this happened, I want to say, about 30 seconds after Dolph and his brother arrived at Makita's. Cornelius Smith was able to point out himself in that video and the defendant in that video. And he said that both of them were the shooting suspects in that video. The second suspect that got in the car was wearing a black hoodie, gray pants, black shoes with white soles, and a Bass Pro hat. The same clothing that defendant Justin Johnson was seen in as he was exiting his apartments at the Crosstown Concourse. After the shooting, Cornelius Smith testified that they got into the white Mercedes that they committed the act in. They went to Bradley Street. The defendant parked the white Mercedes on the yard, and they both got into a white Ford Expedition. They both got into that Expedition, and on the way...
Chad, if I see a few of y'all coming over from Twitter. Hey, again, trial started on Monday. This is Thursday. We gonna get this wrapped up by today, business day. Okay, we want 5 o'clock, everybody out. Let's beat traffic on this one, all right? We ain't gonna take too much time. These niggas guilty. Well, this guy, guilty as fuck. The other guy, I think he cooperated. The two people who did the shooting, one cooperated against the other. I think he cooperated for most likely what's going to be not a life sentence, or even if it's a life sentence, the possibility of parole after maybe 25 years. This guy, I think he's definitely going to get life in prison without the possibility of parole, which means he'll rot, he'll die, and he'll be dragged out as a corpse at some time. But I think he'll spend the rest of his time in state prison. Hernandez Govan, which, by the way, I just want to use this as a lesson for everybody who likes keeping it real. The only nigga who kept it real here, well, if you call this keeping it real, which is doing dumb shit, doing crime, killing somebody, taking life, playing God, he ain't telling nobody, and he's going to die in jail, okay? Everybody else did proffers. One guy testified, and obviously, Big Jook, I guess the streets dealt with him. So this is just formality. They're going to fly through this closing. They fly through, the defense closing. Hopefully we get this over to the goddamn jury, and I think the jury know what time it is. I will say I don't believe the death penalty is on. No, actually, it's not on the table. We could probably Google this really quickly. Death penalty, Tennessee. It's carried out 13 execution. I'm guessing it has existed. But I'm guessing it's not that. Okay. So there's a moratorium placed on. Okay, there's something. There's probably a lot of legal cases surrounding that. No one's gonna die in this case. Okay, so no one's getting needled, and yeah. So it's pretty much. Are you gonna have a chance at ever getting out of jail? Right? Overwhelming amount of evidence, surveillance, people after the fact. I mean. You're cooked when you're half brother. So the guy who's on trial, his half brother just got up there and said, yeah, I was playing middleman for my brother. I heard all the calls. Yeah, my brother was talking about the murder. My brother was talking. You're like, when your own brother's telling on you, the shooter who you met like a week ago, like who goes on a drill with the guy you met a week ago? But okay. If everything like that's happening, you're done.
A couple of calls were made, right? Cornelius tells us that Cornelius tells us that a FaceTime call was made to Big Joe. In that FaceTime call between Big Joe and our defendant spelled out the word Dolph. And as they were on their way to the Gospel Gardens apartment, the defendant also contacted a few other people who we'll find out later on. So once the defendant and Cornelius Johnson arrived at Gospel Gardens, they receive wound care. They change their clothes, and then they go their separate ways. After they go their separate ways, Cornelius Smith tells us that he went to retrieve his phone, and he went to go wipe down the car, the white Mercedes that was parked at Bradley. So with Cornelius Smith's testimony, we have established that the killing was unlawful. There was no evidence to show that this defendant was in fear, was protecting himself, or was protecting someone else. We also established that it was intentional. It's not an accident. You didn't mistakenly follow someone's car into Makita's parking lot and then shoot them. We also established that it was premeditated. They knew about this hit beforehand, and they committed this hit. So if that wasn't enough for you, we heard from some other people. We heard from Kirsten Gardner. He testified that he was present during the time that the defendant was able to get possession of the white Mercedes that the act was committed in. Kirsten Gardner was at the Valero gas station in the early hours of November 17th, 2021. Next, let me go back to Kirsten Gardner. After he testified that, he told us that he didn't know anything about what was happening the next day, or a few hours after the cars were switched. Similarly, Jamarcus Johnson didn't know anything either. He just knew that he needed a ride. And his brother, Justin Johnson, could provide that for him. So he got his car, the rental car, and he took his cell phone, he fielded his calls, posted on his social media, and checked his emails. After Jamarcus Johnson, we heard from Sergeant Dabney. He was able to tell us about the 4 different bullet casings that were present at the murder scene. .40 caliber, attributable to a handgun. .762, attributable to an assault rifle that Cornelius Smith had. .223, attributable to a semi-automatic that Marcus Thornton probably would have had. And a 9mm casings found inside the store, which could be attributable to the handgun that Marcus Thornton had inside the store. That first one, though, the .40 caliber attributable to a handgun, was in the hand of the suspect with the Bass Pro hat. So, Sergeant Dabney also recovered the surveillance footage from Makita's and Gospel Gardens, showing this suspect in the same clothing that the defendant was in.
Not that it matters, chat. They never recovered the murder weapons, and the murder weapons is not part of this case. However, they want to show that the murder weapon seen on the video is consistent with the casings found, consistent with the stories of anyone who either transported the weapons afterwards or provided the weapons the day of. So that's why they're adding that information, that the murder weapon is in here.
And as he was leaving his apartment at 10:49 a.m. that morning. The timestamps on Gospel Garden and Makita's coincide with the times defendant's phone accessed those towers. We heard from Special Agent Garner, who summarized that the defendant's phone accessed a tower that provided coverage to the Valero gas station at 3:17 a.m. Around the same time that Kirsten Gardner said that he saw the defendant take possession of that white Mercedes at the Valero gas station. The defendant's phone also accessed towers that provided coverage for the area of 2370 Airways Boulevard, which is our murder scene. And it accessed those towers during the times of the murder, 12:22 p.m. to 12:23 p.m. on November 17th. Officer Garner also explained that the defendant's phone accessed a tower in the area of the 2-lane road in Shelby Drive from 1 p.m. to 1:59 p.m., which is the direct correlation to the surveillance footage of Gospel Gardens and the footage that Officer or Sergeant Dabney identified the defendant being present for. So next, if all of that wasn't enough, we heard testimony from Sergeant Browning. Sergeant Browning said that this defendant's device placed an outgoing call to Anthony Mims at 12:25:40 p.m. on November 17, 2021. Not only did he place an outgoing call to Big Jook, he also received a text from Akiana Hooper, who is his cousin. She texted him an address of 47.
I know I'm behind, Chad. I'm trying to make sure y'all watch everything because we did start a little bit late.
52 Haven Court. After he received that address, he then sent that address to an associate named Jermaine Sears. Jermaine Sears, or defendant's device, sends the outgoing text to Jermaine Sears that he needs him. And you'll see in the surveillance footage of Haven Court on that day, at that time, a car that is associated with Jermaine Sears arrived shortly after the defendant arrives in a white Ford Expedition. So the next thing, convicted felon in possession of a firearm. The three things that we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that 1, this defendant was a convicted felon or convicted of a specified felony. And 2, after being convicted of a felony, this defendant possessed a firearm. And 3, this defendant acted intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly. So the facts that we have for this charge. Well, 1, there was a stipulation or an agreement. The parties have stipulated that defendant Justin Johnson was convicted of the felony on May 2nd, 2017 in Criminal Court 8 in Shelby County, Tennessee. Next, we heard testimony from Cornelius Smith, who verified that the person in that Bass Pro hat was Justin Johnson, and that person held a gun. So based on all of that, we can see that we have met our burden of proof for convicted felon in possession of a firearm. Next, let's just talk about reasonable doubt for one last second. Reasonable doubt, it is not 100% certainty. It is not beyond a shadow of a doubt. It is not beyond all doubt. What's required is moral certainty. Certainty that allows you to sleep well at night. Will you be able to rest easy knowing the decision that you've made? My instinct says yes. And once you've had time to deliberate, I think yours will too. So that brings us to the end. The state has met its burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You have all the evidence, all of the testimony, all of the stipulations, all of the videos, all the photographs. And now it's time for you to consider that evidence and apply your common sense. And after you do that, I expect that you will find this defendant guilty on all charges. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Very succinct, very right to the point. You know, at times we've seen closing take an hour, 2 hours. They have to go over a lot. Nice little PowerPoint, 3-slide PowerPoint. Basically, this fucker is guilty. Let's see what the defense got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Here's the defense.
It's good to see y'all again. This is the last time you're going to have to hear from me. And as I see all of your faces, I know that's something you're looking forward to. And that's okay. I know that you all want to get back to your lives. And I can tell you on behalf of Mr. Johnson that your attention during this trial is greatly appreciated. What you've had to set aside in order to provide this service, I have no doubt that the court and Mr. Hagerman, Cyrus, all of us agree.
By the way, let me tell you my theory about this guy. This guy got paid, I believe, 50 grand by CMG, in my opinion. I don't know as a fact. I believe that his job is to limit exposure to Yo Gotti and Big Jook, but Big Jook has passed away, in terms of conspiracy charges, or maybe a RICO, even though I don't think a RICO is going to come here, but like in any type of other trumped up conspiracy that would involve Yo Gotti and CMG. This guy's job is not to protect Justin Johnson. They have no defense. He knew I don't even know why they took it to trial. He should have took a plea, but they just had a sham of a trial. He put up zero defense for his client, and if anything, he was more adamant, not that his client didn't do the killing, that Yo Gotti didn't pay. Yo Gotti and Big Jook didn't pay this guy, or it didn't instruct this guy. It feels like he's a CMG, operative, in terms of protect CMG, the shooter going down. And this is the thing about y'all crash dummies. You're going to sit in court, heart beating out your chest. You're going to jail for life. And let's just say Big Jook or Yo Gotti was really all behind this. They're going to get away scot-free because they got the bread. They pay for your lawyer. You think they're doing you a favor. They're just sending you to hell, and they're making sure they're protected. That's the W for Yo Gotti, even though he lost his brother.
You're indebted to you for that. Because like I said in opening, this is important. And you're about to have to roll up your sleeves and go to work. And it's going to be a difficult job. This young man's fate is in your hands. The concept of justice, right? We talked about that in Fort Dyer. We talked about that again in opening, right? And it's in your hands. Meting out justice. And it's difficult because what you've heard is the tragedy of someone losing their life, of their family members not having that person in their life. And that is terrible, and the court will tell you, as terrible as that is, you can't consider that when you're determining guilt or innocence in this case. But it's heavy. Now, on the other hand, you have Mr. Johnson. This young man that you heard in the evidence is a young man, aspiring rapper. Wanted to make it as a rap artist. When you're going back through these exhibits, you're going to see a picture of him in front of the house on Bradley. Engaged in a music video, right, for his rap. Hat kicked to the side, kind of grin on his face, because that's what he wanted to do. And his fate is directly in your hands. And like we talked about, it's never justice to wrongfully convict someone. And so that determination that you're going to make, beyond a reasonable doubt, is the heaviest one. Maybe one of the heaviest decisions you'll ever make. And you've had an opportunity to sit through the trial and hear the evidence, observe the witnesses, and you've been told, keep an open mind. And I hope you have. And I'm sure you have. And not to talk about the case. The thing that you've been listening to for days, with people all around you that have going through the same thing, and then you have to be around them even when you're not here, and you can't talk about the elephant in the room. But today that changes. And not only are you allowed to talk about it, the judge has instructed you that you have to talk about it. And to engage in deliberations meaningfully. To listen to one another, to review the evidence that you've heard, to talk about it, and render a decision. But to the degree you're working together, what you never have to do is abandon your conscience. Now, I don't mean conscience like Cornelius Smith and that conscience, right? Because I don't think he really meant that when you heard from him. He said, oh, the reason I decided to tell the truth is I got a conscience. And we all know that's not the type of thing you're dealing with. You take that more seriously. You mean it. He didn't. You've heard a lot of concepts, the terms of art and the law, the burden of proof, presumption of innocence. And when we started this, I told you, Mr. Johnson sits before you innocent. And I'm again telling you today, after the state has closed its proof, he remains that way. He didn't kill Adolph Hitler. He didn't conspire to kill Adolf Hitler. And he wasn't the man holding the pistol in the Makita video. And it's going to be up to you to decide that. So watch those videos. Watch them closely. They want to talk about those videos, and I'm encouraging you to study them. Give them a close look. The state doesn't want to acknowledge what I told you in opening, and that is similar, it doesn't mean the same. Plenty of people have gray sweatpants, black shoes with white soles, black hoodies. And as we learned through the proof, in Memphis especially, and elsewhere, Bass Pro has. You can look at it, if we had a window, you could look at it and you could see the Bass Pro, which is the pyramid here. You also heard testimony about it being a fad at that point in time. Famous rappers wearing it, other famous artists. I think I mentioned Gwen Stefani wearing Bass Pro. One rapper has a signature Bass Pro hat. You heard from one of the detectives that they even interviewed someone who gave them a potential suspect that wasn't.
The reason why I think this guy's a shitty attorney, we all believe that the guys who killed X, same situation, they were all going down because it was 4 shooters or 4 people involved with the plot. One snitched on the other 3. They were going down. But you know what those one of the defense attorneys or those defense attorneys for the 3 guys did? They try to come up with every fucking reason. You know what this guy could have did? I don't know. But you can tell he's not getting paid a lot. Create a photo array. Hey, does any of these guys look like someone who could have been in that video wearing the same hat, this and third? Like, just put some effort in, right? He's, you remember that they kept, even though it was complete waste, in the X trial, they kept saying, well, wasn't he beefing with Drake? Wasn't he beefing with this? Like, you did nothing to counteract the narrative that young Dolph's only enemy is Yo Gotti, who owns CMG, and his brother, who's like a big part of CMG, then puts a hit. Like, it makes sense. Like, you did nothing. This is why he just sucks, if you ask me. Like, this is a lawyer who just laid down. By the way, I'm going to be honest with you. Even though I think the judge specifically asked Justin, like, hey, have you been, has counsel talked to you? Has everything been explained? This could be appealed. Like, I feel like this is like, I feel like you could probably get an appeal off, maybe not for a new trial, but you could have a situation or a argument about you have ineffective counsel. This nigga's trash.
Mr. Johnson, and said that person always wore a Bass Pro hat. And you have to consider that. And then you have Sergeant Dabney, who, for the first time, And I think he acknowledged this, sitting on the stand, says, I think those underwear are the same. They're both blue. You look at the underwear from Tulane Apartments, you look back at the Makita video, those are the same underwear. Look at it. Look at the steel shots. And for yourself, determine, can you tell if those are the same? And as jurors, you get to make that call. You get to look at it for yourself and compare those. We've heard a lot about it's not 1981 anymore. And I agree. Right? You know, we've got cameras, but like I told you in opening, what also has advanced tremendously since 1981 is the world of forensics. Right? Fingerprint.
See, this is my problem with his thing. Is like, how are you saying this in terms of closing? They brought forensic experts up there. You didn't bring anyone to say, hey, how often are they wrong? Let's check this guy's credibility. I heard this person fucked up on this case. Like, you did nothing to count. You didn't put up a defense. You didn't like, oh, okay, hey, by the way, didn't you incorrectly, like, say with the medical examiner, didn't you incorrectly state the cause of death for this old case of somebody dying, that they died via bullet wound, but it was really they died from, like, it don't matter what it was, you know what I mean? Like, try to negate it a bit. He never did that. So now he's like, yeah, it's not 1981 anymore. And yes, forensic evidence has improved, but you should have proved it. You're just saying this shit. He's just chatting.
Friends DNA, touch DNA.
Again, you should have brought a DNA expert that could support, hey, now we did kind of get some DNA from the car. The DNA we got from the car isn't conclusive. We can't really prove that it was just in there. We got partial DNA. And yes, the state's witness in terms of DNA experts says that it seems to match. But no, actually, that's what Tory was doing. Like, oh, we got our own expert that will say different. Y'all are saying that the gun was blah, 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 blah. I have an expert that say the gun actually wasn't. At least put some doubt into the air.
And you have to ask yourself, why is Justin Johnson's DNA nowhere in that car? There's DNA in that car. You heard a lot about they wiped it. Cornelius Smith said he wiped it. And we'll get to whether you believe that or not in a minute. Okay? But he says he wiped it. But he didn't. There's fingerprints on it. Kristen Garner's, Trayon Ingram's, and Cornelius Smith. There was DNA found. One of it coming back to Trayon Ingram, right? Not Justin Johnson. Now, there's a lot of talk about gloves, right? They made a big point to say, you see gloves in the video. Now, they want you to believe that Mr. Johnson's running around in this Mercedes, and the reason that his prints aren't on it are because he's wearing gloves. And mind you, Cornelius Smith, when he said he wiped the car, never said he wiped the driver's side of the car. Okay? If you believe that. And they want you to believe Mr. Johnson's driving around this white Mercedes, including with his daughter. Look at those videos. You think he's not wearing gloves. And he's got a little girl in tow that would presumably be in that car with him. No DNA recovered. None. Now, during proof, it was interesting because they would show the Mercedes go in the crosstown and the Mercedes leave crosstown, and they would show a video of Mr. Johnson getting out and walking in the building, or walking out of the building. There is no video that shows Mr. Johnson in that Mercedes. And you heard they had a reel, right? The video was a reel when they're doing Crosstown, and when I asked it, I think it was Detective or Sergeant Dabney, about there was surely other cars going in and out at this very time. And he said, yeah. But you have to ask yourself, was Justin Johnson ever in that Mercedes? So let's go to Kristen Gardner. Kristen Gardner gets up here and tries to tell you that. He tries to say he didn't know the car was stolen. Trayon was driving around in the car. And at first, he acts like, even under questioning from Mr. Hagerman, that he wasn't even present when the car was exchanged, because he tries to say, well, Trayon told me. And if you recall, Mr. Hagerman had to kind of go back at him, and I think he said something like, I can't tell you that, and then he eventually started answering some questions. You also remember that this is the same guy that went into law enforcement and said, I've never been in that car. I don't know a guy named Justin Johnson other than on Instagram. He's a rapper. And then suddenly, he starts evolving through the story. Still lying to law enforcement. He even looks at a video of himself, right, pumping gas, and goes, that's not me in the video. And he's like, okay, it's me. But they're trying to tell you Justin Johnson's at the Valero gas station, right, when he's pumping gas. Where is he? Now, they want you to believe that this shadowy figure up in the right, top corner was Justin Johnson, and that he was the other passenger in the Infiniti, but you can't really make out who he is. You have to rely on Kristen Gardner. That's what you have to rely on. And we talked a little bit about, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And I said one of the ways that you could use to kind of understand it is proof so convincing that you would not hesitate to rely upon it in making the most important decisions of your life. And it's really simple, right? You look there and you go, would I trust Kristen Gardner with anything? If he told me something, would I believe it? The answer is no. Because the more he talked, right, the more you realize he and Trayon are in the Mercedes. They're driving around with a Draco rifle, assault rifle. The same one described as being held by Cornelius Smith in the shooting of Adolph Ford Jr. Their prints are in the car. He says they have, he said, a ton of guns in that car. And then he starts talking about how he's related to Dolph, and they were trying to dump the car before, right? And he's reaching out to Dolph's people to try to get rid of a car, which is the reason why after this happened, immediately, day after, he's calling Trayon going, my name's in this. My name's in this. Why would his name be? And B, why couldn't he just say, I don't have anything to do with this? And at Valero, you do see Trayon and Kristen. They're there front and center. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the phone and location. And in the state's argument just now, you heard her saying what the expert said. A phone using a tower that could be and he said could be. He said was in the service area of the Valero gas station. Or then he said, I didn't do any drive tests, so I can't say what the coverage area would have been. Right?
Talking about the experts.
And when you're looking at his slides, you've got that really thick PowerPoint exhibit. You'll be able to look at it. And you notice, right, that you're going to notice that the pictures are all really small. They're really zoomed in on the map. And he's talking about, like, this, do you think this is thorough? This is thorough. I mean, he's going through all these calls. Look at what he's doing. I mean, but then you have to ask yourself, well, what happens if you expand the map? And then you realize, and this is the exhibit I entered, you realize he's not even counting all the data and calls, because when you show what he left out at 12:23, right, at the time immediately after Adolph Thornton Jr. was shot, there are several towers that Mr. Johnson's phone gets off of that are, one's 3 miles away in one direction, the other one is 3.2 miles away down by the Memphis airport. And then he has to go, I left those out. Not a really good explanation for why, right? Important. When there are a group of fine people that are looking to find the truth and have to make this decision and need to evaluate the accuracy of what he's telling you. And then you realize that when you talk about coverage areas and where things are in relation to these phones, somebody could be anywhere in a 3-mile radius, either any direction. And then you have to go, what is it? What does it show us? How did that help? How does that make you any more certain of someone's presumed location at a given point in time? Because he said it's not an exact science, and I'm not here to tell you that I can pinpoint where he is. And I didn't do drive testing, and I don't know. The next available tower is what a cell phone normally would look for, but also I can't even tell you if the towers were down at the time. That could make a difference. That could put you further out. I couldn't tell you if they were down for maintenance, if they were overburdened. And he said, look, if the tower's real busy, it'll direct you to the next tower.
Shut this guy.
But what it doesn't establish is that Justin Johnson was involved in the conspiracy to kill Adolph Thornton. It doesn't establish that he killed Adolph Thornton or possessed a firearm. Now, a little bit about conspiracy and some more of the facts as you heard them from some of the other witnesses. Now, I have to take a little bit of an issue with the state on something that was said during their initial argument. And that is this. There was no evidence at all that Justin Johnson was present for any meetings discussing this hit. What Cornelius Smith said was he met with Hernandez-Govan and Juk, and Justin Johnson was not there. And then he said he met with Hernandez-Govan and others on another occasion to discuss it, and Justin Johnson was not there. So to suggest that he was present and agreed, where's the agreement? He wasn't there. Now, you get to Mr. Smith. The court has already instructed you about accomplice testimony and is already warning you that when you're considering that, you have to use caution. Now, you also have to apply the credibility factors that are in the jury instructions, but they're not an exhaustive list, right? Like we talked about in voir dire. Some of you, most of you, probably all of you have had to talk to somebody before and go, are they telling me the truth or not? And that's exactly what's here. But accomplice testimony is flagged because that person may have an interest in the outcome of this case. And you go, what is that interest? Well, Cornelius Smith, number one, told him. He had to admit. He didn't want to admit it, but he's meeting with the state. He's hoping to get a benefit on his own sentence. He's supposed to be telling the truth. But he's writing his sisters at the exact same time that he's meeting with the government, or the state rather, and telling them, I didn't do this, I'm just lying to get the deal. I'm just lying to get the deal. Now, is that his conscience, like he wanted to say? No. That's him telling his family. His family. Why would he lie to his sisters? If he had a conscience, right? If he had done this out of the sense of, I did this awful thing, I feel awful, I've got to accept responsibility and tell the truth. No. But you remember, and it was kind of an interesting moment when he was testifying, because at one point he says, oh, that's not lying, I was gaming. Gaming's not lying. And the unfortunate part of all this is he's gaming everybody, including trying to game y'all. That's the problem. And he thinks he's going to walk. I mean, and the only person in this case who got paid for this. Remember, there is no proof whatsoever that Justin Johnson got a penny. Cornelius Smith got 50 grand for a lawyer for killing Adolph Thornton and didn't have to give it back. He didn't have to give it back. His lawyer was in the courtroom. And I asked him, I said, you remember, I said, how could you? You didn't give it back, you grew a conscience. What's going on with you? And he went, well, I did it. Services rendered, right? And the lawyer, he's talking about with his sisters, he's saying, oh, well, my lawyer's telling me to cooperate. I'm walking. I'm not doing it unless I can walk. Now, he was asked by Mr. Hagerman, have I ever told you you're not going to have to go to prison? And he said, no, you haven't. But you have to keep in mind two things, right? At the time he was giving all this information that made him valuable to come in here and talk, he thought he was getting out. That's when those letters are going out. Those letters are going out, and he thinks he's getting out because he's got the lawyer, they got the cooperator from Holly Bobo to walk. And that's the type of thing you have to remember when you're assessing whether you can rely upon Cornelius Smith and anything that he said. The guy that sat in that chair, and he was asked by Mr. Hagerman, when you killed Adolph Thornton, what did you feel? And like it was nothing, said, I didn't feel anything. Let's try to get paid. And that's the guy that they want to put in front of you and say, believe it. You know, he went and talked about exchanging money. Right? Getting $800. Right? At one point said, do you find people that he got that Mr. Johnson somehow came back into town and he talked on the phone with him and brought $500, and then some other time some other guy in a Chrysler 300 showed up and provided money to his girlfriend. Well, two things. One, that's not what Mr. Smith originally said to law enforcement. He said that Chrysler 300 came twice, and then Mr. Justin Johnson wasn't anywhere in sight. Well, and what do you know about the Chrysler 300? Jamarcus Johnson. Right? Did Jamarcus Johnson say when he was here in front of you, did you ever hear the state ask him, did you deliver the money? Is part of you being involved in helping Mr. Johnson? Did you deliver money for him? I mean, he asked about the email, or
They're talking about his half-brother now, Jamarcus Johnson.
Text, rather, about Cornelius emailing Justin's phone and saying, essentially, I need money for the birthday party. That's because Cornelius Smith is lying from start to finish. And then for the first time ever, here in court, he says he wiped the card out. Who's in contact? Who's in contact with Govan? According to Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith. Who's not in contact with Govan? Mr. Johnson. Did you hear anything about that? Now, when you go back in the jury room, you're going to be reviewing, obviously, these videos. And one of the things that you have to kind of ask yourself is timing. When you see Mr. Johnson in the elevator with his little girl leaving Crosstown that morning. And of course, you know there's going to be one exhibit that's the reel where the state had on it 11:51 in the morning. And then of course Mr. Hagerman came in, acknowledged the mistake to say that wasn't the right time. And put an officer on the stand, the lieutenant, to talk about getting access to the time, how he got the timestamp. But what that shows you is this. They don't know what time it was that day on that video. They don't know. I mean, mistakes get made. I'm not here to suggest that they don't. But you have to ask yourself, okay, the mistake got made, and then there's a timestamp. Okay, we want to put the timestamp one in. That seems like the logical choice. But then you have to listen to the lieutenant, right? And go, Lieutenant, what did you do to check and confirm that these were accurate times? Well, I looked at the live feed when I was in there. I had to have a technician. It's a computer. I don't understand it. But when I was there, I looked up at the screen and it appeared to be the right date and time. But not one person, you didn't hear from anybody that could say, that was confirmed, that's accurate, nothing happened with the system beforehand. And you even heard him say, it is not uncommon at all to pull surveillance cameras that have inaccurate date and times. Because you have to ask yourself about timing. You have to ask yourself about timing of leaving Crosstown. Mr. Johnson presumably going all the way to Whitehaven, if he's in that Mercedes and dropping his daughter off, right? And he said 20 minutes, something like that. Then he's supposedly driving all the way back to Wild Rose, 20 minutes, thereabouts, to pick up Cornelia Smith. They got to leave, then turn around and go to Bradley and go back to the white truck, right? And then get out and be in front of the Makita Cookie at 12:21.
Yo, this boy is chatting.
Now, that part of common sense and your everyday experiences, what does that tell you about going one place to the other? Right? Takes longer, right? If you're stopping places, if you got to park. If you're presumably dropping a child off, there's going to be some kind of a exchange of a child, maybe a discussion with a person, and you build all that in. That's a lot of time. And I would submit to you that one of the reasons that became an issue is about correcting that time is when the state realized that I was asking questions of that witness and asking him how long it would take to get from point A to point B to here to here to here. Because when you do the math and it's 11:51, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And all this about Bradley, even the exchange of the Mercedes for the Infiniti, the dropping of the Mercedes at Bradley and picking up the SUV, whether somebody cleaned the Mercedes or didn't, who moved their Mercedes to the backyard, all of that, according to Cornelia Smith, should have been captured on Hernandez Govan's home security system. Right? He said Govan had a security system directly facing Bradley because that's why when he decided that he was going to go wipe the car down, either the day it happened or the day after, he couldn't quite remember, he texted Govan and said he was coming through there because he didn't want Govan to mistake him for somebody trying to come up on him. I asked Detective or Sergeant Dabney, did y'all canvass? Yes, we canvassed the neighborhood. He didn't do it personally, but he would have presumed they would have talked to everybody, including Hernandez Govan. Right? We don't necessarily know if they did or didn't, because we didn't get to hear from Mr. Govan. I asked Detective Browning if he was aware of any video from there. No. But if Cornelia Smith, right, is this person that's telling you the truth, because the truth doesn't change, then the fact that there were videos would have been known as early as March of 22, when he was meeting with law enforcement. And I'm not
I said his name from Timu.
saying law enforcement doesn't want to find out who did this. They would have absolutely went and looked. But we don't know. We don't know. And there's a lot that you should know that you don't. Because there's a material witness that should have been called by the state that wasn't called. Hernandez Gomez. And maybe some of you sat through this and thought, I want to hear what he has to say. And when I told you in the opening statement, I said, it's important, right? For you to weigh out and be able, as part of your duty as jurors, to be able to compare those two testimonies together. I'm sure some of you were thinking, yeah, that would make sense. I know we talked about that in voir dire, about getting two people to talk to kind of differentiate. Some of you that may have been a teacher, talking about that as one of the ways that you try to figure out who's telling the truth, who isn't. But you weren't able to do that. You weren't able to do that. You were deprived of that. And to be clear, as you heard about Hernandez Govan, he was cooperating in this investigation. He met with law enforcement on at least 2 occasions pursuant to a proffer agreement, which meant he was allowed to go in and give information and not have his words used against him later. I don't have the ability to make good on a proffer letter. Only the state does. I don't have the ability to wave a magic wand and give him a reduced sentence if he comes in and testifies for me. So he's to my exclusion. He's to Mr. Johnson's exclusion. And ultimately to your exclusion. And if this is a truth-seeking function, why didn't the state call him? And it is. Your job is to find the truth of the matter. And ultimately to go, did they prove their case or not? But you were deprived of that. And the judge instructed you about a jury instruction. And that's the law. That's part of all the different things she told you. This is as important as any of them. And the law states that it creates an inference that the testimony of that witness, Govan, would have been unfavorable to the state. Now, it's up to you to decide whether or not he was unavailable, a material witness, and whether or not there should be the inference. But you're allowed to make that inference in here. And unfavorable, I would tell you, unfavorable to the state means favorable to Mr. Johnson. And knowing that, can you really render a verdict of guilty and have your mind rest easy? And not walk away and go, I just don't know if I did the right thing. Knowing that there was information out there that could have been presented to you and wasn't, that would have been favorable to Mr. Johnson, that I couldn't give you. Can you be morally certain in that instance? In order to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Johnson is the one in that Nikita video, you have to consider everything. You have to consider what you heard. And you have to go, what I heard from Kristen Garner and Cornelius Smith, was that so convincing that I wouldn't hesitate to rely upon it in making those most important decisions in your own life? Will my mind rest easy if I convict this young man based on their word in conjunction with that video and the other videos and what you didn't hear? The answer is no. When you examine your conscience back there, after you've taken the time to deliberate, I think you'll find the answer is no. Two things I want you to remember, and I'm wrapping up.
Okay, finally.
The way the burden of proof works. And you've heard this statement, right? They ain't got nothing to prove. You may say that to somebody. Like, I ain't got nothing to prove here. Justin Johnson, he doesn't have anything to prove here. They do. And we've all heard the term benefit of the doubt, right? Everybody likes to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. You are legally prohibited from giving the state the benefit of the doubt. You can't carry their water for them. Again, I appreciate this is, as I said, the last time I get to speak to you. The state's going to get one more opportunity to talk to you this morning. They get the last word. That's how the system's set up. But it has been my honor to represent Mr. Johnson in this case, and it's been my honor to present this case before you all. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think they're going back up.
We started this with a little Memphis talk. Those cookies are fire. I think that's how we started it.
So I guess the prosecution had a so the way they do it in closing, prosecution goes first, defense goes second, and prosecution gets the last word. Okay, so this is the last word.
Little more Memphis talk. What y'all even talking about? What y'all even talking about? A missing witness? Hernandez Govan? A missing witness? Hernandez Govan? Absent material witness. And the defense wants to say that is Hernandez Govan? What do we know about Hernandez Govan? He's a duck.
Now, by the way, so the way how it's done, prosecution goes first, then the defense. The prosecution, this is called a rebuttal. So they only could rebut. They can't make new statements or still be summing it up. They have to just only rebut what the defense has said. That's it. So they could say if the defense says, whatever. They didn't do their due diligence with blah 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 blah. They can respond to that. That's it. They can't do anything else. It's a rebuttal.
Defendant in the case, he is charged with murder and conspiracy to murder, whether it's from television or whether it's in black and white at the bottom of that same instruction. A defendant has the right not to testify and incriminate himself. He is a defendant He is not a missing witness. That would be insane. I could willy-nilly just start calling every defendant. And they just have to come in here and testify. That's crazy. It doesn't even work like that on television. It doesn't even work like that in black and white in front of you. That would be insanity, and that wouldn't be a legal system where you had a Fifth Amendment right. That would be an inquisition, is actually what they used to call it, where you didn't have that right not to come in the courtroom. So the idea that the defense would call a defendant who's charged with this crime an absent witness shows you how desperate it is. And then we'll talk about things in isolation. Look at Kirsten Gardner. I'm sure he knew that car was stolen. I'm sure he did too. Well, then how can you believe him? Or look at Cornelius Smith. I'm sure it's not his conscience that made him talk. I'm sure it's not either. He talked because he's called. So don't believe him. Somebody made a mistake on one slide about the time, so it was corrected. So we can't believe video. You know, there's a word that actually exists because it's a thing. It's corroboration. It's corroboration is what they call it. Like, can you look at something somebody's saying and compare it to something else and then determine whether or not that person's telling the truth about it? Because that's how we should judge stuff. Did Kirsten Gardner know the car was stolen? I bet he did. Does he think Treon Ingram actually paid for it because of something? No, we didn't pay for the car. They're riding around with guns in a stolen car, and they're trading it with their buddy, Mr. Johnson. But how do we know that? Corroboration. Is there evidence that shows us that? Well, there's the Valero video, which shows something strange. Shows something strange. Shows Kirsten come up in the car and then somebody else get in and drive off. Strange. Another little piece of corroboration. Where's Justin Johnson's phone at the time? Well, in the area of the Valero station. Can you say it's in the parking lot? No, you can't. But it's in the Valero, in the vicinity of the Valero station. But my God, is there something else? Yeah. And this is what is ignored throughout the entire talk we just heard. We don't just have towers. We just don't have cell phone towers. We don't just have a Valero video. We just don't have a Haven Court video. We don't just have a crosstown video. We don't just have a defendant who's like, Cornelius Smith, I'm guilty and so is he. That's us two in the parking lot shooting him. We've got Justin Johnson's actual phone. We've got his actual phone. In this case, it's been over so many times. Things that happen that are actually really dramatic just sort of happen. Because as soon as we saw the video of the Makeda shooting, and as soon as you see the video of Crosstown of him leaving in the exact same outfit, in the white Mercedes, case is over. But we keep going. As soon as you hear from a co-defendant who's like, that's me in the parking lot shooting Dolph, I'm going to prison, and Justin Johnson's the guy next to me doing it, case is over.
Damn.
As soon as you see the Haven Court video, 40 minutes after the shooting of the two shooters and his cousin, case is over. But then things kept on happening. That if you didn't have all that proof, would have even been more dramatic, or would have been dramatic. When they happened, I would see in your eyes a little thing, a little twinkle. We have his phone. And the night before, We have a text. The night before the homicide, we have a text. From who? Treon Ingram. To who? Justin Johnson. Sending him what? A picture of a white Mercedes. What do we have next? Another text. Justin Johnson. Treon Ingram. Dropping his location. Bradley. Kissed and said. They met on Bradley. Then they drove to Valera. And they switched cars. That's corroboration. So do you have to be willing to trust Kissinger with the keys to your car? Of course not. You think I trust Kissinger with the keys to my car? But do I know he's telling the truth about this? Well, yeah, I do. Because it's on video at Valero. It's documented in his phone with literal pictures and locations. This is plain and simple. Do I have to believe that Cornelius Smith is talking because of pangs of conscience? No. No. He's talking because he got caught. Is he hoping that the truth will help him? Absolutely. He's hoping that the truth will help him. Is he going to prison after this? Absolutely. He's going to prison after this. Is there anything about his testimony, like Kissinger's, that we can corroborate? Oh my goodness. What's the first thing he tells us about that day? Justin Johnson calls me. I think I miss a call, and then I get a second one. And what do we got? Justin Johnson's phone. You can delete your call logs, which he did from that day, but they're still in the phone. And what do you know? 2 calls to Cornelius Smith from him right before he comes and picks him up at Lamar Steps. That's corroboration. What does Smith tell us? We go to Bradley directly after the shooting, but dump the cars. Dump the cars is important. Because here's another little, real tricky truth test. Justin's driving the white Mercedes. You see it in the video, of course. Cornelius testifies to it. He says, we drive to Bradley. He hands me the keys to the Expedition. I jump out of the car. I get in the Expedition driving while Justin parks the car in the driveway or there on the front. Well, we know the white Expedition is also Justin's car. We've seen it across town for testimony. What do we see at Haven Court? Cornelius says, from there we end up going to Justin's cousin's apartment. It used to be called the 2 Lanes, Gospel Gardens, the address on Haven Court. We see the white Expedition arrive. And who's driving? The white Expedition. Justin's car. Who's driving? The dude with the messed up shoulder and the messed up shirt. Cornelius Smith. I mean, how do you make that up? How do you make that up? They pull up at Haven Court with Cornelius Smith driving and Justin in the passenger seat, just like it had to happen, just like Cornelius Smith told you when he testified. We do the shooting. Justin's driving the white Mercedes. He hands me the keys to the Expedition. We get to Bradley. I jump out. I get in the driver's seat of the Expedition. Justin parks the Mercedes, jumps in, Haven Court. And what do you know? That's what we see. And what do you know? If you're lying, that detail is almost impossible to account for. Corroboration. We plainly see in the video, Haven Court. We plainly see them go inside. We plainly see Justin Johnson come out, meet this character in the Dodge Challenger, get some other clothes, get some bags, go in. We plainly see the Chevy Trax come, Angela Arnold, pick up Cornelius. We plainly see Justin get in whose car? The Expedition. and the two pull out. His testimony is corroborated over and over and over. And that's so incredibly important. This is what we do in trials. That's how we make decisions. Corroboration. That's why we have evidence. That's why we don't just call one witness and say it's over with. We put evidence in front of you. And one of those moments when this trial was just over again for the 5th time was when we were showing the slide from his phone, from Justin's phone. Cornelius says right after the shooting,
This is a state rebuttal, chat. By the way, we're a little bit behind. The jury's already deliberating, so like we're a little bit behind. If you're tuning in, currently the jury's deliberating. I think this is going to take about, this is like half a lunch break. I think it should take about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I don't see them really. Again, it might take longer, but it's not, in my opinion. This is my opinion. We've pretty much watched everything. And I think you guys, if you've watched with me, you probably have the same opinion. I mean, literally, the shooter had no defense. Their only defense was cross-examining the state's witness. Okay? One of the guy who was the co-shooter told on him. His brother told on him. And apparently, the guy who hired him to do the thing, like this is a dumbness of like being a shooter, a crash dummy. The guy who hired you, is dead. Big joke. The guy who's a right-hand man who took $10,000 from your $50,000 you're supposed to get, he took a proffer, which means he probably gave up information on you. Then the guy you went to do the drill with, the other shooters, 2 shooters, you and him, he's telling on you, and he fired the first shot. Ain't that a bitch? Then, listen, you're caught on surveillance tape. They got all your calls monitored afterwards, not in terms of wiretap, but they, the guy is corroborating it happened. This and this. They call this and this. They have all these things on captured. You have no defense. Essentially, stick a fork in him. He's done. This is a state rebuttal. They've done the closing. The state already did the original closing. Then the defense said a bunch of nothing. Then this is supposed to be quick. I don't know why this guy is still talking, but he's probably going to wrap it up in like a second or two. Then we're going to see the official instructions from the judge on how to consider the charges, how to deal with whatever. Then they're going to go into the room. And again, I listen, it's 2 o'clock on the East Coast time. This shouldn't take till tomorrow. Get this nigga life right now. You feel what I'm saying? Like, it's over. Like, you know what I mean? This is like open and shut case.
This shooting, Justin calls and then FaceTimes with somebody. He says it's Big Joke. The guy that put the money down for this. Number 2 is CMG. Guy that put hits on the other artists too. Cornelius says it's a FaceTime. Spelling out Dolph with your hands. And what do we find in Justin's side? I mean, the league is still up all day long. He did. Whole day. November 17th. Deleted all day long, but it's still in there. A call and FaceTime interaction with him. Justin Johnson with Big Joke. Who Big Joke? Cornelius tells you. And there you see it in black and white. It's not 1981. No, that's true. Caught on camera and everything else, but you're also walking around your pocket with a phone that you can delete a call on, but it's still there. The times you called Cornelius Smith that morning, still there. The time when you called and then FaceTime with Big Joke right after the murder of Dolph, still there. The videos from Haven Court that show you arriving, still there. The videos of Haven Court that see you changing clothes. Did he have enough time to do it? Well, yeah, he had enough time to do it. He left crossing at 10:51. He had over an hour and a half to go drop off his kid 20 minutes away and drive 10 minutes. Total trip probably take you 30 or 40 minutes. Yeah, you have enough time to do it. We saw him do it. Memphis talk? All the times. All the times. Before the murder, we see him at Crosstown in the murder outfit. Similar clothing? No. Identical clothing. Patch on the legs, Bass Pro hat, everything. Before the murder, the Mercedes. Similar Mercedes? No. Back end damage, just like we saw in the video. During the murder,
Y'all know YSL trial jury is mad as fuck. They're like, yo, these motherfuckers is about to be done in 4 days. We're on 137 days. The YSL trial.
So first off, I want to say RIP to Young Dolph. If you guys watched the video, then you know Big Jook, Yo Gotti's brother, was allegedly the one to put the money on Young Dolph's head. The streets were promised like 100K, you feel me? And like, I guess the two killers, they were both expecting to get like 40K a piece. One of the killers, so you crashed out and killed Young Dolph and you're only getting $800. And this is what's gonna happen. Like, I'm not gonna lie, let's keep it a bean, bro. If Big Jook is involved, it probably came from Gotti. But you feel me? They don't want to blame Gotti because they know if they blame Gotti, what's gonna happen with it. You blame Gotti, you will be turned to a pack. Yes. All of Jook's goons are probably Gotti's goons. You will be turned to a pack. So yes, they said blame a dead man if you want to get out. For real. The whole thing is sad. Basically, Young Dolph died for $800. You know, Dolph probably could have doubled that. Dolph probably could have gave him 100K. You feel me? Like, Dolph was really having it, which is sad. You feel me? But Dolph should have never been back in the city. I don't know why people forced to go back to their city in the first place, knowing that you have so many people trying to kill you. I feel like it's like an ego booster for people going back to places where they know it's not good for them because they quote unquote feel the safest. No, bro, you should not feel safe somewhere where it's a whole other side of people trying to kill you. Feel me? And now we gonna see how this trial really fully goes. Big Jook, feel me? He's dead. The killer dead. Yo Gotti, I'm not gonna lie, Yo Gotti probably feels a sense of death over him too, cause you know the remaining goons that Dolph got. Dolph, the way they speak about Dolph was good to all of his hood. They all love and miss him. They probably will not stop until Yo Gotti himself is dead. Yo Gotti will probably never go back to Memphis ever again. If he does go back, it's like every time you go back, you have a 40% minimum chance of dying every time you go back. There's no point in going back. Or they want to get everyone close to him. They might try and get the black youngsters, everybody, bro. Like, it's scary. It's a war. It probably will never end. You feel me? It's your boy Big Act News. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I am out.